go. Hey everybody, welcome to the Growing with Fishes podcast. We have a very special episode. Tonight is episode 200. We have a wide range of wonderful guests on the show tonight. We have Wade Laughter.
You want me to say something about that, or you just want to leave it at that?
Yeah, introduce yourself.
Find the mute button here. Wade Laughter here, founder of House of Harlequin, propagator of the cultivar known as Harlequin. Have for a number of years really been doing the deep dive on cannabinoids other than THC and their potential benefit for health and human safety. But I'm really clear that THC is an important component if you're talking cannabis as medicine. So my whole thing is highest quality and purity of product because your end users often are somebody who really needs what you're producing, and it's got to be done right. That's my whole thing. And that means no contaminants, no extra funny business, just straight up cannabis medicine, because I know that by itself will do no harm. And that's all I got for the moment. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Thanks so much. We also have Breeder Steve with us, the original aquaponic cannabis grower, the first one to write about it online.
Thanks for having me again. I guess this is my third episode with you guys, huh?
Yeah. I just realized I thought it was the second, and I looked today and realized it was actually the third time. I was super stoked.
Yeah, because I remember the second time you invited me, I said, I'm sure I said everything I had to say the first time.
Yeah, and then I listened to it the other day and realized, yeah, you have so many cool things to say, and I'd love to hear about your newest aquaponic project, because you're doing some cool stuff. You even got some caimans and stuff going on down there, so super stoked to hear about that.
Yeah, it's cool. Definitely
we also have Dale Hunt.
Hi, I'm Dale. I am a patent attorney and a plant scientist, degrees in botany and genetics and molecular and cell biology. And I've been doing patent law for 23 plus years, been in cannabis about 7 years. And I founded a law firm called Plant and Planet. And that was in early 2019. And in December, I launched a company called Breeders Best. And that is intended to help independent plant breeders get protection for the things they create and get them out to markets all over the world. So we're just getting started on that company, but we're super excited about trying to make a difference.
Very cool.
Thank you.
Awesome. And then we also have Roger from ILGM.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Roger from ILoveGrowingMarijuana.com, and I hope you enjoy the show tonight. Many guests going to be popping in and out, I think, and yeah, we have a lot of fun that way sometimes.
Awesome. And we also have KDak, one of our longest and oldest fans of the show.
Hey, Steve, happy to be here. I'm a veteran medical cannabis patient. I'm really happy to be here for the 200th episode, man. I've been here since the first one went live, man.
Awesome. And then we have someone else in chat. I'm not sure who that is. Oh, it's
what's
Mike
up, Mr. Steve?
What's up, man? How's it going?
Irie. I'm sorry I'm a little late. Just got home, but we're live and direct up from the Northwest. So I'm Mike for everyone watching on YouTube. Mike MC West on Facebook. I'm a biochemist, build medical and recreational and hemp extraction labs. Currently building a lab up here in British Columbia for Embark, which is Bubbleman's brand. I guess Bubbleman's hash lab, and will be a multi-modality extraction lab up here in Canada's market.
And it's one hell of a facility. Marcus was kind enough to give me a tour of the place before you guys started putting in some of the major equipment, and man, is that place big, is all I have to say. I know you guys have two of them that are bigger than that one even too, I believe, right?
Yeah, so BC's a three-story building. It's just shy of 50,000 square feet. Ontario is going to have a 50,000 square feet, or excuse me, 105,000 square feet. And then we have a couple of projects abroad as well.
Awesome.
So,
Awesome.
yeah, getting some processing available for all the medical and recreational consumers up in Canada.
Very cool. Well, thanks again for joining us. So Wade, tell us what you've been up to lately, and what are some of the projects? I know a lot of rules have changed, especially with the caretaker stuff in California, for the better, and how patients can receive stuff, especially those in need. I know you've been big, very much involved with that. Do you want to tell us what you've been up to?
Sure. Locally here in Nevada County, working with some of the permitted farmers, manufacturers, and the dispensary here. We're most of the way, I'm probably being premature to announce it, but we're about ready to start releasing product with the model of the Cannabis network, where we provide specific formulations for the families of children with catastrophic illnesses. And yeah, going out the gate, what it basically means is for these families that have qualified in our system already, we'll be able to provide them the medicines they need at no cost. All of the persons involved in the supply chain, from nurseries all the way through to the dispensary, are providing their services and or their products at no cost, so that we can put these products into the hands of these families, again, at no cost. Because most of these families, anybody that's involved in the medical system knows you're not going to have much money left, particularly if you have an intractable illness. So that's probably one of the things I'm happiest about, if you will. Because that's been a thing. The Cannabis network was something that we started back in 2016. State law in California required us to shut that down in January of 2019. At that point, we had 146 families that we were actively sending them a box of supplies every month to get their child through the month. We had another 700 and some in our intake system, and state law changed and required us to shut down. So we're rebuilding that network now, and we'll see how it plays out. Eventually, we hope to be able to offer cannabis medicine at little or no cost to people who need it, whether or not they're children. But right now, it's limited to children with diagnoses of catastrophic illness. Most of those kids are in untreatable cancers, intractable epilepsy, or a condition called epidermolysis bullosa, where the children's skin doesn't bind properly to the tissues that are underneath the skin. And so any sort of blow can cause the skin to blister and slough off. And so these kids, most of them die of sepsis or skin cancers. But we've created a cream that doesn't reverse the genetic condition, but seems to really be remarkable at healing the skin and dealing with the pain of raw skin. And then probably maybe bigger news in the world is I've taken up a project in Utah. Utah created a medical cannabis program this past year, and it went into operation in March. And I'm working with the only vertically integrated operator in Utah. And part of what drew me to this group was they're all sort of bootstrap funded, and one of their main interests is food hubs. So I loved hearing Roger talk about growing food this year, because I think it's really a time when those of us who have learned so much about plants through working with cannabis can start educating people on how the practices and standards that we apply to cannabis can produce really remarkable food as well as remarkable cannabis. been doing a lot of advocacy work on the state level. And in some preliminary conversations with some folks in Jamaica who are interested in some of the genetics we're working with. And I'm interested in that because, again, there's an opportunity there to see a lot of people have access to the preparations that we know can do so much good. What else is going on? I don't know. That's kind of it. I'm really feeling actually kind of grateful for all the insanity that's happening in our culture right now. It feels like we are being forced to confront a lot of the poor choices we've made and encouraged and offered an opportunity to make some fresh choices. And it's everything from the way our law enforcement interacts with citizens in our country to how cannabis businesses are treated. One of the things that's been happening in California is a lot of, because the physical location, address, et cetera, of all cannabis businesses are a matter of public record in California. One of the things that's been happening is organized gangs have been going around and breaking into manufacturing facilities and dispensaries and burglarizing them and robbing them. And because of the slow response times that the police are doing because of all of the other activities that they're having to deal with, many of these break-ins are going unchallenged. And I know dispensary owners that have, they lost their cash, they lost their ATM machine, they lost all their stock, and the cops never showed up. So it's really, we've gotten the BCC to take down the listserv that listed all of the license holders and their addresses. We're still working on the Department of Public Health and the Department of Food and Ag, which licenses cultivators, to take down that information as well. But again, I feel somewhat inspired by this whole thing that's going on, and keep reminding myself that the only thing that's constant is change. And boy, we got a lot of change going on at the moment. That's all I got. And it's really great to see some of these people again. Thank you for doing this evening.
Thank you so much for joining us. I know I find myself often finding solace and basically zen in the garden, working with plants, especially coming back from Africa and the craziness. And I know a lot of other people out there are spending a lot more time in their gardens, given the different crazinesses going on in the world for, you know, depending on the different reasons, depending on where you are. But I'm definitely looking forward to seeing like what new techniques and what new ideas and what new discoveries people make in their gardens, you know, having all this extra time to spend in their gardens. And I think that, you know, you're going to see a lot of cool new ideas come out of this as a result of people just spending more time in front of their plants. So hopefully that'll be some of the positives that come out of it.
Yeah, they say
so
garden centers have had a run on lately with so many people having the time and inclination to garden. So that is an upside for sure.
I normally order from Baker Creek Farms every year, or rareseeds.com for those of you that get vegetable seeds out there. And they were almost completely sold out and had to shut their website down for a week because they were so overwhelmed with orders compared to normal. So it is really awesome to see the resurgence and people interested in producing for themselves and rely, you know, and having their own food and their own medicine production. And I'm sure that same boom is happening in the homegrown side as well.
It's safety, man. It's safety to be able to provide for your own family, whether it's a garden, your own medicine, or eggs, man. Eggs in your backyard, chickens, man. It's just, we need that right now. Our whole culture needs to get back.
Yeah, I found the same thing at Johnny Seeds when I got a late start this year because we're rebuilding the old greenhouse. And I went to Johnny's, and a lot of times I buy the packets that have 25 or 30 seeds so I can grow them and find out if I like them, and then I can buy a bigger supply. And they were all sold out. I felt like I was in a toilet paper store. I swear to God. But I'm so happy that people are. So like you said, and Wade, I think what you're doing is just phenomenal. Anytime somebody dedicates their career to working with kids and children and helping make and ease their pain when they're sick, I find that number one on my list is commendable. Thank you.
Awesome. What about you, Breeder Steve? You're doing all kinds of cool stuff down there, including some aquaponics. For those of you who don't know, he was the original person, the very first person to put on anything in writing, as far as I can find, and any kind of research. And I've done quite a bit on aquaponic cannabis growing, way back on overgrow.net. He was the very first person. So tell us what you've been up to. You're doing all kinds of cool stuff down there in Colombia.
Yeah, we've got a license down in Colombia for medical, and we're doing bio cannabis, field grown, really making the land better every year. And the reservoir we just finished is 3 million liters. It's got everything in it, from little alligators or crocodiles, caimans, do they call them Bobo Diaz or something? They got a couple names for them down there, but there's all kinds of fish and waterfowl, from flamingos to ducks, that land in it and use it. And it's just amazing to see. And it's very new, so it's going to develop, but it'll stock itself to some degree. Like, even a lot of the fish that got in there, it's in the plains where the farm is. So there's a rainy season that's a very short rainy season usually, but all these fields end up with little creeks that were dry 8 months of the year. Then all of a sudden they've got little creeks with fish in them. So as you're digging your reservoir, you will end up getting native species filling in, and it's really something to see. There's even like wild passion fruit and stuff that grows around in the bush there, and it's really sweet. And they're little, but they're just delicious. But they're grenadillas. But man, oh man, it's really something to just be doing the bio growing, even at scale. People say you can't do good organic growing at scale. And I'm like, try me, I've been doing it a long time. It's just logistics. So it's beautiful. Most of that farm is just one way, but the greenhouses where there's some genetics library and stuff, and the juveniles, wherever there's a call for greenhouse, which isn't much there. We even grow the mothers outside with supplemental lighting that's on 6 p.m. to midnight. And then the juveniles, if they're variety that's not acclimatized, that you can just grow in the field without any supplemental lighting. Obviously, those are the ideal, but there's no such thing as tropical CBD, for example. So if you want to grow CBD on the equator, it takes a little time to acclimatize that. And challenge down there is you have to wait for quotas for every seed you plant that's over 1% THC. So instead of being able to just do generation after generation and get your work done, you're always waiting on red tape. So it's really painful doing it the licensed way. I did it legal in Switzerland for years ago, 20 years ago, literally. And it was legal, no license. I can work with that. That's the way it's supposed to be. And once they overcomplicate the licensing, as they do so often in so many places, they really make it inefficient, is the kind way to put it. And I'm
set you up to fail.
Yeah, I'm at the edge of my seat all the time, whether I want to keep doing it or not. Like, is this really where it's at? Like, I'm trying hard to do this on the legal side and, jumping through their hoops, but they don't make it easy, So anyways, I do love a challenge, and there's lots of people that want to do it. So I'm happy to throw down and get it done with my team there. But, you're just working against the river sometimes, it seems. But it is satisfying when you do start to see results. And we're trying to fill up and keep full 2,000 acres right now, which is 889 hectares actually, but there's just over 860 maybe plantable. But that's a fair bit of herb. And we do both psychoactive and what they call non-psychoactive, which is 1% THC CBN combined. But, I am developing things I've found from the world of seed, which is really interesting to me. The two that I'm trying to bring up levels of minor ones are the CBDV and the THCV, because there's not as much as that around. And if I can get good selections bred up of those, they're considered non-psychoactive. So that means no security, no fencing. It's much easier to go ahead and keep planting. You don't need a quota for every plant you put out. So definitely there's some advantage to dealing with some of those. And THCV, is from hotter climates anyway. So it's not too much of a stretch. And CBDV as well, and more Middle Eastern, but I'm having fun with it. I'm glad to be back at it. I took quite a while off, and I've been back at it about 4 years there now. And yeah, it's just great to be able to big up the aquaponic. And I love that you've been promoting it so strongly, and a few others, mainly your friends. And it just warms my heart, because I just always felt really strongly about it being a fantastic way to grow by any metric, whether it's yield or flavor or sustainability, but it's just overall easy. If you set it up well, aquaponics is the easiest way to do it. If you're doing it in a facility, you're just throwing them in rocks, shaking out the rocks, leaving the stuff there. I don't clean down between every crop when I did them. I wasn't trying to meet any special standards or anything either. But if you have healthy system, all the good bacteria, the aerobic bacteria is already thriving in that there. You don't want to start over again to try and establish the colonies you want. Once it's all in equilibrium, you can kind of take plants in and out of the system, and the same system can feed all the sections of the garden. So it's really just beautiful. I just loved it. I was really just, when I first even thought of doing it, because I'd heard of it in other things, I thought, I have to try that with grass. And I was just tickled pink to see just those thick white roots coming out right away. And I was excited, I was like, this is working really well. And, you make mistakes and learn as you do it. But if more people grew that way, there'd be a hell of a lot less phosphates getting flushed down every Saturday morning when hydroponics guys are changing their reservoirs. For the aquaponics, you just have a constant level float valve topping up the reservoir. You never drain it. It's just much friendlier, and the herb tastes better. There's no comparison for me. They burn, if it's done well, they burn with a really clean white ash, not even gray, but white, like snow. And it just blow away. And I just love it when the last tote tastes as good as the first tote, That doesn't happen when it's overfed and tarry and built up. And aquaponics can be done poorly. I would always know some guys that I would set up aquaponic systems for, they would end up just wanting to visit once a week, not during prohibition. So they would have, dispensers putting in the pellets and stuff. And if you're just making a tea of pellets floating around there, it smells horrible, and your weed's gonna smell horrible. This is it is what it eats, and there's no two ways about it. The fishy smell, you don't get a fishy smell from a healthy aquaponic system, but from putting a fish in your hole, or using fish emulsion, or the pellets and flakes that are typically fish food are just basically fish emulsion, and they smell horrible. Like when you open up a little jar of goldfish flakes, think how nasty that smells. You don't want your weed to smell like that. So whatever you're feeding the fish, if it's real food, it's better than the pellets and flakes. But even if you're feeding them the pellets and flakes, don't feed them more than they would eat in like a minute. Because if the stuff's floating around in the water, it's going to impart a bad flavor to the herb. And I've seen that in commercial aquaponics grows where you can tell it's aquaponic, but not in a nice way. So if you can keep as much balance of life in there where they're eating off each other if possible, even better, But the algae is easy. Let algae and algae eaters feed a lot of it. Those are easy.
That and a lot of the newbie or aquaponic growers don't understand the need to reduce nitrogen in flowers, so they end up with like a ton of that extra chlorophyll on the back end. And anyways, I'm sure you've had
I think
some
when
before.
you have the mothers growing on the same system, they kind of sponge out the excess. Like the veg plants need more nitrogen, and that's what they'll take, you know. Whereas the flowering plants, they don't need as much. And as long as there's some available to them, they'll take what they need. But if you're force feed them anything, it's too much.
Awesome. All righty. Well, we had another awesome person join us since we started here. Thanks so much for joining us, Frenchie.
Yeah, a long time.
Yeah, it's been a while. Your beard's a lot longer. How you doing? What have you been up to these days? You've been quite the busy man.
No, actually, I've not been doing much at all. I've been writing mostly, which is good because I thought I'd never find the time, truly. But no, otherwise, I'm trying to go with the flow now. And the flow is a heavy duty rush lately. Pretty insane.
So what are you writing? Are you working on a book you got?
Yeah, I'm working on that book on ash, basically. So a big part of it was the origin of cannabis and origin of ash. And I went through comment on dit ça? Like I was in a mindset that if humanity use any type of plant in any given places repeatedly year after year, you're gonna be a hot spot of that genetic there. You know what I mean? And going from there, I mapped the migration of animals and of the cannabis plant 28 million years ago. And then I mapped the migration of Homo erectus, Neanderthal, Denisovan, and Homo sapien. So I put down all the archaeological sites. And from that, I created the archaeological hotspot. On top of those archaeological hotspots, I put genome hotspot. And on top of that, I put the mapping of cannabis today. And it's amazing what I can see. It's really crazy. It's really crazy. And from this, I got 3 really potential birthplace for cannabis. From the Mediterranean Sea, like Israel, to the Altai Mountain. One is in Israel, one is the Tarim Basin, like where they find all those people with a stash of cannabis at shaman, and all those storm, it's around the Tarim Basin, and that's where the first great ash known to the Western world were coming from those places. So the Tarim Basin is hot. Then you have like a hot spot in the Altai Mountain where you have the only place where you have 2 types of psychoactive drugs, the narrow and broadleaf together in one spot. And there's nothing there, but all the descendants of the Yamna and the Scythian and all those stoner, nomadic, pastoralist culture, actually they left they left archaeological evidence, but in tombs or in engraving in stone. And it's like, I get that hot spot in the middle of fucking nowhere in a mountain with no archaeological hotspot or genome hotspot next to it. It was in between. And it was fucking weird until I came on the research of the culture of those people. And actually, they left archaeological evidence. And when I put those on the map, it became really pretty intense. So that's what I'm doing.
Awesome, awesome. So I'm super stoked to read your book on that. I know it's something that I've heard you speak, I think 4 separate times on the history of Hatch, and I think I could listen to you probably another 30 hours.
I'm learning a lot. It's like lately I had that. My problem was I was damn sure that cannabis resin was used as an incense, okay? Because frankincense and myrrh and Gildean balsam, all those stuff were worth like more than gold and precious stone. And all those cultures where like civilization was born, the Assyrian, Babylonian, Phoenician, Egyptian, all those people, they were really hardcore into incense and bulb and stuff like that. So it was pretty weird. And lately, they have found the first evidence of cannabis resin ever. 2,700 years old in Israel, in a shrine, in a fortress. So now there is hardcore, solid evidence that actually cannabis resin was burned alongside frankincense in the most holy temple of Holy Temple. So now we're talking.
We're talking burning bush here.
Yeah, no, it's like there is a strong evidence that cannabis resin, hashish or charas, like live resin in some form or other, had been going on underground in ritualistic, shamanic or religious ceremony.
So I have one question about your book that I'm sure every single person listening to this is asking themselves or wants to ask you right now. Will you be doing the audio book for it?
I never thought about it. The question is, will I translate it in French, like for the moment?
No. Just you reading the audiobook, even in English, with your accent.
With the accent. Interesting. No, I didn't thought about I'm not really audio. It's funny. My daughter is totally, and me, I have a hard time on it. I cannot learn listening. I need to read. It's
oh no, I didn't mean that in a negative way. I mean, I think it'd be amazing. I would love to listen to you read your book in your voice.
Yeah, that could be interesting.
The other question, I wanted to follow this over because I was just over doing an aquaponic panel on Future Cannabis Project, and we're talking about Appellations, and I was talking about how a lot of the other aquaponic cannabis growers should possibly try to come together and maybe think about aquaponics as it's almost its own Appalachia because of the way that the production method was. And you end up coming up in the conversation on what your thoughts would be. So let me just ask that question. What are your thoughts on some of the more obscure production methods, kind of form, maybe not an Appalachia, but something similar in structure?
An appellation is made of standard. An appellation is a dedication to quality. And an appellation d'origine, with the word origin, The origin is the earth, it's the soil, it's the land. So it's like there is only one type of appellation d'origine. It's a terroir, it's sun-grown, it's only local input, la la la, la la la, the whole 9 yards. Then to apply a standardization dedicated to quality for greenhouse, for indoor, and different type of methodology to grow in those conditions, hell yeah. You cannot put them under the same umbrella, but you can create something that is very similar per se. It's just a dedication to quality, which means that, which shows the uniqueness of a product. And you can do that. I mean, there is proof that you can do that indoor. Look at all the OG. They come from the same stock, but they're different because they've been in the hand of different people. And that it works indoor or sun-grown, it's the same. And I'm pretty sure aquaponic, depending on who and where, well, the same cultivar is not going to be quite the same. You know what I mean? There is always that.
Yes,
there's
varying terroirs in earth, but in aquaponics, it's terroirs.
Yeah. I mean, it's you cannot use the word terroir, but there is that.
No, you say
there is that osmosis between the plant, the person, and the condition created to grow the plant. You know what I mean? You create your own terroir, and with water, you go even into another world, literally.
That's why with water, I call it terroir.
Yeah.
The only way that you're going to be able to meet one of the requirements for an appellation d'origine is going to be in cultivation in native soil. So, the only way you can actually fall under that specific appellation ruling would be having, aquaponic system where you have ponds feeding water through swales. Those swales.
That's my house.
Yeah, bro. Right?
Yeah. No, one way aquaponics is the thing, because putting that rich, sweet water into a field is the best thing for the field.
The appellations are based on the land, the climate, and the soil.
Yeah.
And it's made of standard. If you use the same standardization for your own world, it works. It's just that you cannot use the same word, but you can use the same concepts and the same type of standardization to bring the highest level product at the end of the day. Like you were talking about being careful of the food you give, otherwise it gets fishy taste. Well, it's part of those standards that have to be followed, that are a pain in the butt. But if you follow those standards, you reach a plateau, a level of qualities that show dedication, basically. You know the name of the game, huh? It doesn't matter the medium you use, the name of the game is the same when you're dedicated to quality.
I remember when, by the way, what's up, guys? I just want to say, I just hopped on, but what a fucking proper crew you've got for this episode, Steve. Like, well done carrying this show, bro. And like, you got champions on the show.
That's big. That's big to do.
Yeah. I forgot what I was going to say now. I totally forgot what I was going to say. Yeah, it's a little stoned.
Yo, Dutch. So
yeah,
naturally, so your property's beautiful. You got this great climate where you have, not only you can take advantage of the mild climate. You have great sun, great exposure. You got your deciduous forest kind of surrounding you, so you don't have tons of side light or strong winds. But obviously you have part of your property that's going to be outside, part of it's going to be inside. The question that I'm going to pass on to Dale is, because you're cultivating part of that crop in a greenhouse, in a way you're controlling that environment, but So it falls into, okay, how much of that controlling your environment is going to, at what point does it no longer become that specific appellation, right? And I think some different standards say, you know, if you do use artificial lights, it no longer becomes part of the appellation. Some of them say it has to be native soil. Dale, I believe there's some that,
Before Dale answers, I'd love to give my 2 cents, because I think a lot about this, obviously. And like, that's why I kind of popped on the jokes of making a property aquaponics. Like, since a lot of you guys have been on my property, I dug a huge 1/4 acre pond, and I have like 5 swales coming down my property to connect all this, and all my runoffs go into my pond, and it's circulating through rocks, and I have fish in there and amphibians. And so I'm working slowly on building, and Steve and I have spent a lot of time talking about this, building a system that is my own ecosystem. And that water goes into my greenhouse, which it also has native soil in it, but it also has raised beds. I mean, I'm kind of writing these lines. That's why I wanted to like speak on it real quick, you know, and I do have mixed lights, but what comes out of my greenhouse is very specific. What comes out of my greenhouse is very specific compared to what comes out of my indoor grows on the same property with the same soil. And that's interesting, you know?
Yeah. No,
Like
that's
I can dig up that soil that I'm using, right, and put it in a pot, a 20-gallon pot, put it in an indoor garden on my property with the same, like, open air moving through, right, not a closed sealed room, like I'm trying, right, and it's better, easier in the greenhouse. I literally can put sick plants in there, not touch them, and they become miraculous plants because my greenhouse has over the last 4 years become a life of its own.
Yeah,
so that's
in a way, being a farmer, we're cultivators, right? We're not only cultivating the plants that provide our income, but we're cultivating our farm, and in doing so, we're hopefully enriching our environment, both on our farm and in our communities. So in a way, simply farming is going to alter our environment, hopefully for the better.
But farming is the farmers, actually the community that supports the farmer is part of the terroir, like the cultivar. But the cultivar and the farmer are both living organisms that are shaped and are born from the soil and the climate. Before anything, there is the land and the climate that shaped and give life. Anything else adapt to it. You know what I mean? It's so powerful outside. As soon as you control it, even like that, sorry guys, it does not work anymore. It's like the appellation is really the full expression of the land through the product that is in osmosis with the farmer and the methodology. You know what I mean? We are byproduct of the land and the climate. When you take those of the equation, then we manipulate and we create something else that has a lot of value, but you cannot use the same values that you use for those appellations d'origine. We just have to create different type of appellation for all that richness of possibility of growing that we have. Actually, I mean, it's like it's a beautiful, and
we need an appellation to cannabis.
Yeah, but it's like you want an appellation that is meaningful. If nobody cares about your appellation, what's the value of it? If it's not like the French people that everybody want to copy the appellation we made because it's the top of the top. If it's just to make something and makes everybody happy, it's not going to work. You want to have something so fucking sharp that the world over want to use your stuff because it's it. Then you would be relevant forever.
I totally agree with you. And I think part of the problem is like literally getting a group of people in the same area on board to be like, yo, we're going to fucking pump this cultivar. We're going to grow it to death. We're going to be the champagne or whatever the cultivar is. This is going to be our region. This is going to be our Swiss cheese. You know what I mean? Like no one.
Yeah, they grow many
get,
many types of grapes
yeah
in the room.
and we don't have we do and don't have a
But
world economy.
you can still have some variety that way.
No, but look at the Emerald Triangle. We don't even know how much genetics they have because they're fucking growing purple punch and wedding cake. You know what I mean? Can we stop doing the same shit than everybody else when we have the goods? It's like we're supposed, it's like, if I am in California, it's because I love the farmer and I love NorCal, but they have a pool of diversity and genetics that is fucking unique on the planet. There is no place in the planet that is known for its quality. We don't even know what they have because they don't grow it anymore. It's like everybody would buy California sun-grown flower, but people in California. It's fucked up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just jump in, and I agree completely with Frenchie. And hey, Frenchie, it's good to see you. And to me, as a biologist more than as an attorney, I think about the fact that when you've got a true interaction between the organisms in the soil and the genetics of a plant and the weather and the airborne microbes, you know, the yeast and all the other things that are in the air, as well as water that hasn't been overtreated, all of these things combine in a unique biological process that, if those things are are allowed to interact in the most natural way possible, they will result in a particular unique and special manifestation that can't be really at that level, cannot be replicated anywhere else or by any other measure or any other method. As soon as you start to say, okay, well, we've got 30 different cultivars that we're putting under this appellation, those interactions are going to be different for each genetic selection, and they may all be great. You may want to, but I think having meaningful appellations really does have to not just include the way it was grown and where it was grown, but also what was grown. And I think that's really important. And there may be some cultivars that would fit really well in an appellation in a part of Humboldt County, and something else that would do really well in Sonoma County or in Southern California or wherever the appellation turned out to be. But I agree that as soon as it starts to be the product of a whole bunch of external modifications to the unique nature of where that is, where it's grown and what is present in that nature without a lot of manipulation, then you don't have a consistent, meaningful appellation anymore.
I mean, according to the European community, not only the French, there is no appellation without the terroir. There is no origin without the land and the climate. It's very simple. That's the whole name of the game. Now it's like, how can we make different style of appellation? It's more a standardization toward quality, but it's like, that's another story altogether. Appellation, it's a marketing tool. Why? Because there is somebody, imagine somebody in south of France that can grow lavender in a mecca of lavender that is so unique, that is an appellation d'origine contrôlée. It's like Roquefort. You make mini blue cheese, there is one Roquefort. That dude can grow lavender in the middle of everybody, and he's so in tune with everything that is create uniqueness. That's appellation. That's that sense of dedication of being part of it.
And that's a complicated biological interaction of all kinds of organisms, all kinds of signals that you really can't replicate anywhere else. And this might be an urban myth, but it's a useful example whether it's true or not. They say that if you get a start of sourdough, San Francisco sourdough, and you take it back home with you to Ohio or wherever, it just doesn't stay the same after a while, because real San Francisco sourdough, part of what makes it unique and consistent is what's actually in the air in San Francisco.
Do that, Dale.
whether that's actually true or not, it would absolutely be true in a cannabis farm, that it's not even just the water and the soil, it's the air too.
But for cheese, for olive oil, for everything, it's the same story. It's like goodness, greatness has a point of origin. It's not really connected with you in America because you don't have that sense of being close to the farmer, because it's farming here has taken another dimension. For us in Europe, the farmer is every day down in the street. You know what I mean? It's like they were risking their life in World War II to bring us the food. Our relation with a small farmer, I mean, there is only small farming. We don't have the space. I understand here it's difficult to think small when you have so much space, but it's not really the size. It's that respect toward nature and understanding where what it takes to grow something, basically. Yeah. You don't have that in your culture.
Well, you know, as an example of that, Frenchie, just a quick story. We were talking about chickens before, and I love chickens, and I've had chickens for a long time. And I gave a friend of mine a carton of eggs, all different colors, and she looked at it and said, "What are these?" I said, "Well, they're chicken eggs." And she said, "I've never had eggs from a real chicken before."
Exactly.
Yeah. And within a couple months, she had her own chickens too. She got chickens in her little yard in Long Beach.
Got real chickens, huh?
Real chickens. Yep.
Speaking of chickens, is anyone else using ducks for pest management at all?
Yeah. We did it on the, we had two Muscovies on a small scale, just in my little backyard system, and it really put a dent in it, man. Muscovy ducks. And also they're really quiet as well, so they're not going to bother your neighbors, and they'll give you some eggs.
I have 25 Indian runners, and ducks are mandatory on my property. I've lost a lot of starts to slugs. My property, I'm in the woods, as Mike was telling you, and it's really wet, and so a lot of fucking slugs. And last year, I think I lost half my starts, which is the tune of 1,000 or so to slugs. And yeah, and this year I lost my ducks over the winter, and so the slug population kind of bounced back up, and I started again when I got 25 that are about 6 weeks old, and they crush it, dude. But I have like an acre. I'm in Bellingham, Washington, right up by Canada on I-5.
I'm in Gig Harbor.
Yeah, Gig Harbor, same setup, sort of setup, dude. It's fucking. My son pointed out a slug that was like 8 inches long the other day. He's like, "What is that?" And I'm like, "Dude, that's a slug." He's like, "That's a slug too." I'm like, "Yeah."
I swear I've seen them bigger than that, man. Like just crawling on the side of my house, leopard slugs. Like, oh, it's disgusting.
Big old, and those giant banana slugs further down in Humboldt. Those big giant guys that get you. Yeah, no bueno.
Ducks are pretty sweet though. I mean, I can't say enough about ducks because they don't fuck your shit up. They eat a lot of the grains from the grasses and stuff, and they drop poop everywhere. They're just and kind of in theme with the same talk about creating a like your own fucking terroir, like moving water and having duck water and living water moving through your garden. I think is a really cool feature that is under talked about. You know,
there's a book called One Duck, or at least a PDF. I don't know if it's a book, but it's called One Duck Revolution. Kind of like I think it's kind of a play off words from another famous book or something. But One Duck Revolution, it talks about growing rice, with starting the rice as seedlings with baby ducklings, and then the rice matures as the ducks mature, and they have a symbiotic relationship.
Very cool. We also have Chris Trump just joined us as well.
Hey, Chris.
What up, guys? How's it going?
How's it going, Chris? What
have you been up to? Yeah, hanging out in beautiful weather in Idaho. Yeah, and one straw revolution. That's what you're talking about, Kirk. Yeah, we're growing all kinds of things out here, and it's nice. It's the right time to have seeds in the ground, and everything's jumping. It's fun. I've been thinking about ducks.
What have you been up to these last few months?
You know, I call it the slug life.
Yeah, it's crazy.
No, it's been good connecting with people online and through, you know, that kind of communication. A lot of time with family, and then working with some farmers to, you know, start land. I'm working with a grass hay farmer that's kind of rodeo horse training expert, and they have about 100 acres to do grass hay, and so we're remediating their land. And Monday I'll be making 20,000 pounds of IMO4, which is a microbially rich thing based on your indigenous microbes, the terroir, like you were talking about a little earlier, Frenchie and Dale. Yeah. So we're doing that. I'm gonna head out to a project Josh and I were doing in Colorado on the 15th, and just see how that's going. It looks really pretty. And then I'm gonna head back over to Hawaii, work with my family farm in July. Some projects there, and things are going really well. So yeah, just, I don't know, this last few months, you know, slow motion, hanging with family, getting my workout, wrestling with, I got 5 little people, and yeah, it's been good, but definitely stationary and slow moving, slug life.
Sounds good.
So is anyone else here aside from Frenchie working on a book or any writing projects during the slowdown period?
Well, I can't, it's definitely not a book, but I write blogs that are too long. And I just posted one yesterday on plantlaw.com, but this one wasn't about plants or IP. It was, and I'm not intending to steer the discussion this way, but this was about George Floyd and ending police racism and brutality. I think it's an important topic. Anybody wants to go look at my blog, that something I wrote. And then I wrote just before that what I intended as a blog post on the founder effect, and the fact that having a lot of varieties of cannabis is not the same as having genetic diversity, and how to bring in genetic diversity from land races and from seed collections and things like that, but also how to do it in a way that's ethical based on where those things that really came from, and taking into account the Nagoya Protocol, which aims to make sure that things that come from what's it called, traditional knowledge and indigenous peoples and locations, that when there's a lot of value that comes from there, that some of that value finds its way back there. So that was going to go on my blog, but it got picked up by a publication. I'm not sure when it's going to come out, so I probably shouldn't say which. Well, I think I can. I think it's coming out in Cannabis Business Times, I'm pretty sure. Not sure when though.
And I had to run into a similar problem in Zimbabwe. So in Zimbabwe, they were all super happy to have us register US, EU, or Canadian cultivars. But if went and found and sourced some stuff from within Zimbabwe, from some actual Zimbabwean growers up in Nyanga and some of the traditional growing areas, I couldn't legally, there was no pathway to legally register traditional cultivars. And that's wrong. Like, why is there no pathway for that? This is stuff that's been growing in your own country for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And this is something that I think is also a problem with the legislative bills, that you have to have preservation for your own genetics that you can be proud of and brand around your country, around your and around your own, soil type and whatever else, and a lot of countries aren't taking advantage of that opportunity.
Yeah, we definitely need to do some policy work on that to make it so that I think, that the aim of saying you can't register it is probably, it's probably a misguided goal. Well, it's probably a misapplied execution of a good goal. The good goal being we're not going to have people come in and appropriate this stuff and take it off and get rich with it. But the fact is, if you can't register at all and you can't do anything commercial with it, then the people that really could get paid from that aren't getting paid. And so that's what the Nagoya Protocol is all about. But it's complicated, and of course the U.S. is not a member of it. Europe is, but figuring out how to do that right is an important part of being able to bring in what you could call exotic genetics or traditional genetics or diverse genetics, and have it actually get to people and benefit them, but still have some of that value get back to the indigenous origins.
It's literally national treasure that we don't use. Have
Yes.
you heard about phenotypic plasticity, developmental plasticity? Like every living organism has an epigenetic memory. I change my DNA for the next generation, or a memory, you change your fucking phenotype right now when you're alive. Okay? And the more cultivated you are, the least powerful you are into adapting, literally. So we have such a fucked up library of genetic that it would be maybe time to clean up and to go back and respect the laundress that gave us everything we have. Up to now, we don't know what we did. We didn't know what we were doing. Now we know better. Maybe it's time to calculate that a lot of stuff that we have, it's really worthless. It will go nowhere, and there is treasure into it that we have to preserve. And it's starting with laundresses that we have to do it. You go into a foreign country, the first things you need to teach them, it's not to fucking grow CBD or wedding cake or whatever is grown in Canada or wherever. It's like, I want to smoke Colombian. I want to smoke South African, grown in South Africa. You know what I mean? It's like the Durban poison from my body in Durban.
That's
Well, I have never tried the Durban poison like that ever. Huh? It's different, you know what I mean? If we don't grow
really
like
is special.
Punta
If you haven't
Roja in
grown
Mexico,
Santa Marta Gold in Santa Marta or Punta Rojo in the mountains, it's so special to go and do it. Trust me, it's so special. And it's never lost on me for a second that it's really, really important to conserve all the native strains, but to see them and taste them in their own environment is something else. Like I fell in love with Santa Marta Gold a long time, 25 years ago, you know, and it was 16 weeks to flower inside and absolutely the most heavenly perfume. And I swore one day I would go back there and grow some. And it was actually harder to find than you think when you get back there 4 years ago. And but once you source enough, you start finding things that you knew were just like the original, and then you work to restore them, because a lot of that got diluted too. When you think of all the people that show up, they go out and visit the people with traditional production areas, but they bring them a bunch of new seed, and that is like salting the fields for anybody that comes behind them, you know. But it's, you don't want to see the real native varieties lost, you know. That's really something, and they're so distinctive all over. And even for Colombia, there's so many different ones. You know, I'd maybe heard of 4 before I went there, but you know, 4 years later, I can probably think of 10, and there's more than that, I'm sure. But there's real diversity throughout, and even in that country, especially, there's 11 different climactic zones as they classify agriculturally. And the things that are acclimatized to one zone don't necessarily thrive in the others, you know. So even though you think, well, I'm at this great equatorial latitude, but the altitude counts for everything as well. So it's really a massive difference. You've got mountaintop glaciers and oceanfront deserts and everything in between. So it's really neat to try all this stuff and to try it in the various regions, which I'm getting to do as well. So it's like, but I'm trying stuff from India, from Africa, everything from around the world, but with a real focus on equatorial belt, and trying to make, new and useful lines out of those. But the first step is always just the conservation, small population seedings and cabinets of each of the ones that you have collected, because you can maintain a massive gene bank of them that way. And it's really important to me to have that as a palette, as a painter, it's all the colors in your palette, so it's really a hoot to source from the land races, and just to follow the latest fashions and crazes and the High Times Cup bud isn't necessarily all that, because some of us even miss the old flavors that the kids today have never tried, so it's interesting.
So on that note, that's a question I'm dying to ask this panel. So what terpene profiles or terps or flavors or whatever really are found in those 10, 12, 16, 18, 22, 24 week cultivars that maybe we grow for outdoor for ourselves, but you simply do not see on the commercial end, they're on these quick turn cultivars. What specifically, because this group actually has a really good idea on all that stuff, because I know there's definitely a lot of stuff that I don't smell anymore at all that I definitely remember from high school, and vice versa. And I'm sure there's other stuff that I remember from growing when I was younger that took, we cut down in Pennsylvania right before it would snow in beginning of November, and allegedly. And but anyways, what specifically as far as terp profiles does this panel comes off the top of their head as far as those longer profiles? Because I'm sure some of those sesquiterpenes take more than those quick turns are even capable of, correct?
I can't speak to some of the older stuff, but I can speak to some of the stuff that I've been running in the last 10 years and I can just say that like the sesquiterpenes are both in the shorter term varieties and in the longer term. Like I have a lot of 7 to 8 week varieties that are done, like that Paiho, and that Paiho smokes all the way through to the very, but yeah, I mean, the last bit of it, you're just kind of like wanting to crunch it down like a muffin,
I think of them as high notes, the stuff that flowers super slow. And unfortunately, I don't have enough of a lab to do terpene testing yet. We're just getting cannabinoids for analysis, but I hope to add terp testing real soon. We are out in the jungle, and even when we send to accredited labs, of which there's 2 there for cannabinoid testing, and neither of them give you terp reports yet. So the equipment's just not there yet. There's no good labs in Colombia, really dedicated to cannabis analysis.
I have not smoked anything here, even remotely close to a naturally grown tropical plant. It's like I don't think
not too many people understand
those
that.
plants are going through a light change, because there is 15-minute difference between winter and summer. Yeah. Instead of 6 o'clock, the sun rise at 6:15 and set at 6:15. There is no light difference. Those plants, they just flower when they have reached the peak of their vegetative states. You can't.
Can I ask you, Frenchie, like when you make that statement, does that like run across the flavor profiles? Like, that like when I think of, I'm inexperienced with equatorials, right? Like I grow mostly short varietals. And so when I think of longer term varietals, I think of more fruities and hazes. And I don't think of like the danky, stinky stuff that you know what I mean?
I've had some equatorials that weren't nice flavors, like Indonesians. I really don't like them. I grew some, I think they were 16 or 18 week ones, and they really had no aesthetic value for flavor to anybody, I wouldn't think. I don't remember exactly what it was, but they were kind of off-putting. Like just nobody liked them. Like something akin to onions, you know, but that is not a perfumey strain, that's for sure. But maybe in Indonesia it would have been better than my Swiss greenhouse, but still, I saw other, you know, equatorial thin leaves that were narrow leaves, let's say, that were just absolutely divine, the best tasting herb, and the uplifting high that just lasts. Like even I had some, you know, slightly stale Punta Roja that I'd grown with just 100% native earth and pond water, and I had some scrappy popcorn of it sitting in my freezer when I came back down there one time. And the nice thing in Colombia is everybody's allowed 20 plants personal. So that's better than Canada's 4 maybe, but not if your neighbors can see it bullshit, you know? And some provinces, not even that. But so Colombia thought that was pretty cool. In their constitution, they're allowed 20 plants personal. So you've got no excuse not to have a few jars around. But that Punta Roja, just, I love it. And it was actually the first plant I ever harvested buds from in my life. It was probably 89, I guess. And it was from Jamaican seed, but I never saw that plant again until I got to Colombia and was in a region known for Punta Roja and said, is that Punta Roja? And it was the first plant I'd ever grown, but I didn't know it at the time. And that flavor, he just wasn't really around on its own. Once in a while, you'd see it in some really pink-haired stuff. You think, oh, this has a little of that smell like that first stuff I grew. But boy, oh boy, once I grew some down there in the prairies, the sun down there at 3 degrees off the equator, that's about 370 meters altitude. The sun, when you're walking around in the middle of the day, it feels like a weight on you. It is so intense that it's, you know, I laugh at people think indoor can be as good. It's so much stronger, and it just blows my mind how the plant expresses. And when I take modern stuff and plant it out there, anything I would expect to flower 8 weeks indoors, it will flower outside in 6, and rock hard, no pistils left, just swollen and done. But you got to find the ones that don't finish that fast, because otherwise they don't get any size. So, you know, looking at the equatorials and the equatorial hybrids is amazing. And some of the true equatorials, I could put seed in the ground with no supplemental light in May and come back and harvest them the first week of December. They would just grow and grow. And they would be about 9 feet tall and a very delicate high note perfumey herbs. And they weren't even super high THC, but still, just for the growth pattern, worth having in the collection. You know, you've got to look at the things you need, and sometimes it's right in between two. You
know, I always remember listening to Frenchy talk about people growing in the Himalayas as well and planting in the fall. And you know, imagine people planting in the fall in the States. I know that's something I had never heard of until you had told me, Frenchy.
Well, I hadn't heard that either. But
in Colombia, all year round.
I want to ask about this, like the vigor I see in volunteers. It blows my mind. You know, I'm working in my greenhouse, so I know the plants that these volunteers are coming from, obviously, and I have seedlings that I started from the same stock right next to them in trays. And watching these volunteers just blast past them.
Let me tell you, this is the truth, and this is so important. People got to know that. You plant the seed where you want it to grow, best case scenario. Because if it can shoot deep roots down before the top goes up, it eliminates a huge amount of watering, labor, but not just that, it grows better without the disturbances. It's amazing. I had to show my people down there too, because they were in the, you know, out of legality reasons where you can't grow from seed, but you can only grow from a registered cultivar, which is, you know, a unique cutting. So you'd have to have mothers and cuttings just because of bureaucracy. But I would say, let's just put a row of seeds out beside them, just so I can show you, and don't even water them. And they would come up and grow side by side like effortlessly beside everything else, and they would be stunned. You know, they look at it's so easy to grow from seed. A lot of people have lost sight of that. You can put a seed right where you want it to grow, and if you know the conditions are good, the soil's decent, it'll grow better than all the transplanting in the world. You know, just put it where you want it and let it grow, because that taproot goes down undisturbed, and it'll go down deep before the plant grows up. And then when they come up, they look like cardboard leaves almost. They're just so thick and established. It's way nicer than trees. Like sometimes
it's just, I mean, I'm observing that. And so I appreciate you confirming that. You know, I'm a 4-year veteran of growing outdoors, right? So I'm mainly an indoor person. And so observing that and seeing that, I'm just like, pushing myself off later and later now, you know, and like kind of I feel like I'm gonna start following that kind of traditional tomato path where it's like I'll probably plant my seeds eventually,
Yeah,
you know, next year, you know, June 1st. Yeah.
No, give them the winter over. What is the volunteers? But a plant that is so well adapted to your place that it can grow without your help. It's the beginning of an heirloom. You want to protect that. You need to create condition where you have actually volunteers popping. You make a bed outside so that it gets the full winter condition. You just protect from bird and shit, like rodents that they eat the seeds. And whatever pop, you pay attention. Whatever thrive, you fucking breed with it. Because that's a local girl or a local boy. If it can thrive without your help, it becomes local. You want this into your genetic pool.
Yeah.
So that you need to be able to create volunteers to be able to breed.
100%. That's actually where my brain was going with it, was like that's how I should be planning, is in the fall I should broadcast my seed, and what comes up in the spring is what I plan to work with and weed down from there, rather than doing this nice finely cultivated, you know, popping of my seeds and you know, babying them through. I'm not, you know, if I'm breeding, I'm looking for strength. I'm not looking for a huge crop. I'm looking for the outliers.
Leave them the whole winter outside. I mean, don't you put them in the fridge before you?
I thought about that too. So that's where my brain went too. Right? It was like, why not put them in the fridge? Yeah.
They need to be cold. They will start popping only when the soil is getting warmer. So let nature do it. They do better than you.
Agreed.
All plants are like that. All plants, the better they do, you know, unaffected, unhelped, the better they're taking nutrients from the soil they're in. It's across the board in all plants. And when I look for a plant to use for plant fertilizer, I'm looking for the thing that's lush and rich and the bugs don't touch it, because it's taking that soil and these conditions and making the most of it. It's killing it. And so all plants, and so those are going to be producing these complex, you know, flavors and smells, and it's because they're thriving there rather than struggling. And if something's struggling, it's, you know, like any of us, if we're sick, we're not showing our A game. I love that. In Hawaii, you know, that's a lot of people grow like that. Just seeds in the ground, and you know, stick it somewhere where no one's gonna find it, and come back 9 months later, you never checked on it once, and you know, harvest.
That's the way. That's the beautiful. I love that. Guerrilla. That's how the first 5 years I grew was just guerrilla like that, where you gotta go, you know, mix up the soil you want, go out and put the plants you want, and you come back, hope it's there, you know.
Your only problem with you guys, you put only Sensemia. You don't leave the boy. Leave the boy. If you leave the boy, nobody can eradicate after you. It's like if they had done this in a mountain here in NorCal, it would be like the Himalaya. Nobody would be able to eradicate those plants.
Okay, can you guys also talk about?
Ash from seeded bed.
Can you guys
really like, kind of the staple. I grew up in Siskiyou County and in Humboldt County in California. And, back in the day, guerrilla grow was really, the staple. It was way more common than I feel like it is now. And that's what they would look for, was places that they could just plant and leave it, and strains that they could just plant and leave. And they just overplant. They would plant, just tons and tons and tons of seeds, and whatever they got was what they got. And that was a very successful method for years and years.
Seed them out.
So I had a question for this panel as well. Does anyone here want to touch on the fact that, and this is something that it was newer to me until it was Roster Jeff, shout out to a Grow from the Heart podcast, who talked about this quite a bit. It's something that I've only experienced smoking his stuff, about pollinated terpene profiles in cannabinoids versus unpollinated, and how that there is actually a difference in the profiles in the exact same cuts between a pollinated and unpollinated. Does anyone here have any info on that? Maybe Mike or anyone else?
Are you saying like the female flower pollinated versus unpollinated?
The hormones from the pollination changing the terpene expression.
Yeah, it must.
Cannabinoid changing. The whole, it's like the plant produce trichome to capture pollen mainly, and to protect itself from predator and climatic condition. Okay, it's like because it's a sensimia, because you don't put the male, that part of the production is intensified. Okay, and it's like getting pretty before going and having sex in the city. Okay, it's nice, you're hot, you're gonna bring a lot of boy and shit, but once you're pollinated, you're a mom. You protect the next generation. It's not fucking around anymore. You know what I mean? It becomes,
after you've been fucking, it's so pretty.
I'm a mother. I protect the next generation. You don't fuck with me anymore. You know what I mean? And there is studies that show that there is more trichome that are formed, especially around the seed pod, and there is an intensification of the production of terp and cannabinoid, because it goes into not capturing pollen anymore. It's done. Now into, I protect my seed from anything, big time. And like the plant goes into overdrive. It's like it's part of the cycle of the flower that you don't have, and it bring a lot on the table. Huh?
Have you had a chance, Frenchie, to run side by side, like wash a pollinated batch versus an unpollinated batch?
Not yet, no.
So
I've done it a lot. I've checked.
Can someone listening to the show? Can someone listening to the show, please, for the love of God, get Frenchie some pollinated and unpollinated of the same cut, please, in the near future?
There was the thing I loved about seed crops, is when they were doing a seed production run, I was keeping every resin gland in that room, or that greenhouse. I would grow full greenhouses, like a sweet 2-3 seed, and say, I am keeping every resin gland in that greenhouse. And that was definitely one of the major perks of you working with seed, because the seed was the business, the resin was personal. And because it was always from seeded bud, almost always, because I would always have test runs where I did comparative stuff and have some sense to trial, but still it would all end up as hash, because that's what I love to do with it too. But seeded bud, I've never quantified the difference, but I've always felt that it was a little different, the hash made from the seeded bud versus its virgin sisters,
So when you look at the chemical composition of the seeds, obviously there's a high percentage of hemp seed oil. So chemically speaking, and enzymatically, upon pollination, there's a chemical hormone shift in the plant where they actually start producing mono and diglycerides, which are essentially fatty acid chains of carbons that either are 1, 2, 3 chains of carbons in a row. Now, within the trichomes, smaller sections of those chains of carbons that are based on glycerin molecules are bound together using hormones into those beautiful things that we've come to love, which are terpenes. And within those different classes of terpenes are subclasses, one of which exclusively found in cannabis is a tricyclic or bicyclic terpenoids, which are the cannabinoids. So upon pollination, you are going to start to see the plant start shifting some metabolic process into producing those mono and diglycerides that go into these seeds. But obviously the plant still wants to protect those seeds. So it'll continue to produce resin that those resin glands are going to continue to metabolize the terpenoid precursors into terpenes and into the cannabinoids. But one of the things that seed breeders end up doing is they don't just take their plant to that week 8 where it's ready to be harvested.
Right.
You have to take it a couple
yellow
weeks.
And falling apart.
Yeah, you got to take it a couple weeks further until the seeds are, I believe the term's cracking or starting to come out of the seed heads, right? So what that ends up doing is you end up with a slightly later maturation at harvest on your cannabinoids. And analytically speaking, I have seen higher percentages of some of the activated and CBN and mostly THC converting into, or THCA converting into THC in seed crops. Terpenes, they're fairly similar. I have seen some interesting results in some of the larger molecular weight terpenes being higher later in flower. But
When you say terpenes are in potency are similar or in availability?
So you have to think of those trichomes, the stipe cells at the base of the trichomes that are creating those precursors that then bind together to create the cannabinoids. They're chemical factories. They're going to continue to produce as long as your plant is growing, it's photosynthesizing, it's pushing sugars down into the soil that feed the endo and ectobacteria and fungi that then provide the minerals and terpenoid precursors that flow up the phloem to not only your seeds but also the trichomes, right? So it's a chemical factory. If you keep that factory running longer, it's going to continue to synthesize not only terpenes and cannabinoids, but upon pollination, you are going to also see that kind of shift towards the production of mono and diglycerides, mono di and triglycerides, specifically within the seed. For many of us being hash makers, we're not doing an extraction. So those mono di and triglycerides aren't going to get pulled out of your extract. That when you actually wash it in a solventless extraction, you can isolate those gland heads and not have the oils come out of the seeds. Ideally, obviously, we're trying to collect those seeds before it goes through any sort of processing, but there are going to be errant seeds that end up into the compost and hopefully get recycled into the next generation of cultures. So.
Good answer.
Oh yeah.
So what does everyone see as like the biggest challenge going into the rest of the year, I guess, aside from legislative stuff directly? Is there any other big challenges? I know it's getting really hard to source a lot of common grow supplies. Are you guys having the same issue?
I would guess that most people are bought up. Like, when March hit, I was, everyone I talked to was like, oh yeah, I just bought trucks and trucks of shit, so much shit.
Oh yeah.
ready to go. And I was the same way. I was like, that hit, and I was like, Amazon has been my best friend. I hate to say it, you know, I mean, I'm not a fucking, but it has, you know, it comes to me.
Good reason to grow your own.
What's that?
It's a good reason to make your own inputs.
Yes, sir.
Regenerative choir.
Once you got a nice compost pile going, you don't end up needing much else. You know, compost.
Right, and that's why I was. I have a huge house compost, and I needed to get some pots and a couple things here and there, and you know, you always need to get a new spray wand or two or whatever fucking reason.
There's always something.
Yeah, but really, once you get your biology going on in your system, it's not that much, you know. It's like you could figure ways around all the other stuff, right?
Well, I only watered these twice in their entire life.
Hell yeah.
Well,
that looks beautiful, dude. By the way, I've never got a chance to compliment you on that. It looks very fucking cool, dude.
Oh, thanks, man.
Marty,
I haven't talked to you in a while. How you doing?
Do you want to explain your side by side you got going on there?
Sure. So I have a number of experiments that are going on sort of simultaneously in here. But over here, so I have two plants. I call them just don't fucking touch them plants, which is this one right here. And it has nothing but castings in the dual root zone from my red worm bin. Nothing else. There's not even aeration. And I get this question all the time, you know, what happens? And so I decided those are going to be my two experiments. So that's that one there and that one over there. And I literally haven't touched them since they've been in the system. You can see all the dead leaves are still hanging on them and everything is just there. And so those, I watered them when I transplanted them out of the cloner into the pots that they're in, and then put them in the system. And all of these were only watered twice in there since they came out of the cloner. So so this one's castings only, and then this row has varying levels of potassium, and this one has varying levels of nitrogen. So that's kind of what I was experimenting with, different soil mixes. And then I'm going to go with, and also different size pots. As you can see down here, I've got a few different size pots. So I was kind of messing around with different mixes and different pots and kind of what I wanted to do. And then once this run comes down in about a week or so, I'll replace it with all the ones that did the best, and probably, you know, mix all that out. I'll probably run a couple more side-by-sides in the next one as well, but they'll be slightly closer together to try to dial them in, and probably do the same thing with a couple of different strains. So that's my little fun. I'm trying to determine what level nutrients play in development. So as opposed to microbes, you know, we've all, you know, been involved in that. And so I do want to eventually do a run. I know we were talking earlier about planting directly where you want the plant to grow. And I do want to do a run from seed where I plant directly into an existing dual root zone pot and have it grow from there, because I think that could be a lot of fun. And I have sprouted plants that way, but I never finished them. I always got moved or whatever. And so I'm finally in my new home.
Transplant shock is unavoidable.
What's that?
Transplant shock is unavoidable when you're transplanting. You can do a great job and minimize it, but there's still transplant shock, you know?
Right, and recovery time, right? Like, I mean, we always knock on auto flowers for, oh, you can't transplant them, like they're the only plants that get transplant shock. But I feel like, you know, it's just that, you know, obviously don't transplant autos. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that regular plants don't have, you know, you don't think about the time that it takes for them to recover. You just go, oh, I'm going to veg it for another week, and don't really think about the time that you lost to do that. So I'm hoping to work with Mr. Green Jeans.
Outside, you use way less water. It's not going to make as much of a difference in containers inside, obviously. But outside, you use really, really less water, dramatically so. Because transplanted stuff without a drip line would be dead in 2 hours, you know? To be, it's got to stay moist, and it's got a root ball rather than a long deep root, you know. So a long deep root It means you don't have to put out irrigation half the time. It's amazing. Just direct sowing in the field. Different story inside. The lease transplanting is often good, but you know, do what works for you for sure. And as you are, experiment. That's the fun part. You know, that's the only way you ever move forward.
Yeah, and I think I'm just lazy too. You know, who wants to upplant pots all the time? Or you know, I don't even like watering them. That's why I built an aquaponic system to start with.
I agree. That's exactly it. I've got a shit back, and I hate lugging pots and soil around. I just wasn't into it at all, and I like the idea of just shaking the rocks off of them and pulling them out, you know. And it became so easy when you set it up right. That was the fun part. You spent more time staring at your reservoir, which was an aquarium, than you did looking at the garden.
Oh yeah,
You barely go in.
Yeah.
You have it sealed up, CO2 and glass window. I'd look in there and I wouldn't go in if I didn't have to. It kept it clean. And there was a reservoir outside full of plants and fish and eels and crabs and shrimp and suckers and you name it. And you'd spend all the time getting high and looking at the aquarium. It was beautiful.
Awesome. Well, I thought before we wrap up the show, I figured we could go over some stats on the 200 episodes that Marty and I have done. We've had 55,611 members in the Facebook group. We have a Facebook group /AP Canna. Over on the podcast, we've had over 500,000 listens on the audio version, 209,000 listens on SoundCloud, almost 5,000 listens on Spotify, over almost 8,000 subscribers on YouTube, and over 771,000 views on YouTube as well. And in total, the podcast so far has had over 437 hours, 7 minutes and 16 seconds, not counting this episode in terms of hours of content that we've put out there to help educate the community. The number one enemy of the cannabis industry is education and lack thereof. So the more we can all work together to help fight that, the better. So thanks everybody here for helping being part of that in your individual ways.
Yeah, thank you everyone. Really appreciate everyone coming out. Really cool.
Good job,
man.
I wanted to give everyone a chance to plug their stuff. Dale had to run, so let me plug him real quick as breedersbest.com, plantlaw.com, and plantandplanet.com. Wade, would you like to go next and mention the groups that you work with?
It is harlequin.org. It's a little bit dated. It's a year since I visited that, but you can see some of the stuff that's going on in Utah at dragonflyut.com. That's that's the activity we're doing in Utah. And yeah, there will be some more, a bunch more educational things coming out this year from us Harlequins. So I look forward to sharing more of that with folks. Thank you.
Wonderful. And I know you've also been doing a lot of work with Dragonfly over on Bubbleman's channel as well with their education series.
Yes, no, I care very deeply about the Dragonfly Earth family, and we're looking forward to defining more clearly what it is we're doing in the Dragonfly Earth family, and there'll be a lot of news coming out about that pretty soon. Much love, and damn man, great job on this podcast and the number of people that you've reached out to, because I think it's really true. Education is sorely needed in this work on so many levels. And that's all I got. And again, great panel this evening. Thank you.
Thanks again for taking the time to join us. Thanks, Frenchie, for joining us. Why don't you tell everybody how to find you? And I'm sure you'll be back at your classes again here once they let us all out of the boxes that they keep us in.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to see the workshop, you have it on YouTube. Otherwise, on my website, in the article page, the last 6 articles for Weed World, it's a written version of the article of the workshop. And you have the science behind everything I do, which I think is really important. If you understand why I do things, then you'll be able to bring it further than I am, instead of just doing the same than me. You know what I mean? And otherwise, it's YouTube, it's Instagram, where I really share most of my idea and knowledge, or I give the input to bring the people wherever I want them to go to check it out.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, that was cool. Yeah.
Always have fun. And what about you, Steve?
Oh, I got nothing to plug, but thanks for having me. It was great to see the interest in aquaponics. I mean, it was just something I fell in love with, and I thought, you know, heady people will get it. The heady people will get it. So I'm glad you're carrying the torch, man. It's beautiful. Keep up the good work.
I hope to twist Frenchie's arm into coming out and making some awesome stuff in our solventless lab with some aquaponic stuff here. It's once the virus breaks.
I wish I could come to. It's all right. Well, you can come down for a visit. We'll do something for sure.
Good.
What about you, Chris?
Sorry, I muted myself. Hey, I just proposed the idea that if there was a PhD in aquaponics cannabis, Steve, you would be the one of the lead professors in that in teaching that. And currently, I don't think there is a PhD in cannabis production and dual root zone aquaponics, but I could say we have a forum here, you know, enough brilliant minds and industry leaders that we can. I think we should award you, you know, an honorary PhD of all this world you play in, and all the knowledge you're sharing. So for what it's worth, you know, I think you got doctorate status in my book.
I at least want a certification then.
Yeah, I'm you know, terrible with websites, but I got some people to help, and so gonna continue to kind of add more content. I guess that's where I'm gonna shift, is I have a little bit of time this summer to put content on naturalfarming.co and just really help people kind of wrap their heads around what it is to produce their own inputs and take care of the microbes in their soil. And yeah, and then YouTube, always continue to put stuff there finally. And that's just search Chris Trump on YouTube. And you can always hit me up on social media. Instagram is @SoilSteward. But yeah, appreciate you, Steve, and fun stuff you're doing.
Well, thanks for all the awesome content you put out there for teaching people how to do KNF around the world. I can't tell you how many people I gave your YouTube channel to while I was in Zimbabwe. So
I give it to people all the time. We get questions about KNF all the time. So.
Oh yeah.
Cool.
What about you, Josh?
I just wanted to also like build you up, Steve and Marty. I may be the longest listener to this show. I was like searching aquaponics, this aquaponics, that, in the era of, you know, 2010. And so every day, so I like anything that would come up that was new, you know, basically from 2008 to 2012 in aquaponics, I knew of. within a couple of days. And so I've been watching you guys forever, and it's a beautiful thing you've done. I'm very stoked that I got to be a part of it for the time I've been, spent on it. And you guys have spread so much information and been so diehard about it. And so I just want to commend both of you guys for what you do, and everybody else that's been involved too, Roger and Mr. Mean Jeans and everybody else. You've had a lot of different people here and there on the show, but the two of you have held it down, and so yeah, good work, dude. Both of you guys.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, I put on a conference, the Regenerative Organic Cannabis Cultivation Conference, but yeah, that's neither here nor there.
That's cool too.
Which was born on this show.
I've heard it was really good.
It was born on this show. It actually was born on this show too. So that's a really important thing to recognize, that Leighton and I met on this show, and that connection happened, and we started the conferences that touched a lot of lives through that. So,
and the conference,
I'm out of breath because I'm walking with chicken feed.
I know that conference definitely changed my life in a lot of ways, and I think a lot of people on this panel as well.
Yep.
Yeah, so many recurring guests, just can't thank them enough for just donating your time. Like, we know how valuable it is. And so just appreciate it, and any answers you gave anybody and shared, I mean, literally for free, it's, and to Steve for lining literally like 99.9% of our guests up to show up. And from the early days of like, I'm going to spam emails to random people and see if they'll show up, to networking with people at events and meeting, some people on this panel, just tons of hours that I really benefited from, just in personal knowledge and getting to, ask a plethora of different experts questions just for my, my own personal knowledge. So just thanks, Steve. Appreciate it.
And thanks everyone for all of your support. Marty and I initially met. We just were disagreeing on a forum on how to grow on aquaponics, and then we realized we were the only two people that were able to have a high level conversation enough to like have that disagreement. And then we soon became good friends. And then we had a guy that kept picking on us, telling us you couldn't grow weed in aquaponics. So we started a show to prove to them, to put out education so that they could not say that they couldn't do it. And then it turned into including regenerative soil and living soil, and we just started including more and more of the community that were aligned in a similar way in terms of trying to make things more sustainable and regenerative in their own way. Maybe not necessarily with aquaponics, maybe it be regenerative soil or the Dem Pure movement or whatever the different niches are in the group, but we're all kind of on the same sometimes there's a little bit of infighting and goofiness, but we're all in the same way where we're trying to get away from that chemical crap production and get away from the mineral salts and get away from the factory farms and the large scale indoor factories that you've seen fail over and over again in the Canadian market, spectacularly in some cases. And I'm sure once you start seeing production done more heavily in South America and Africa, they're going to get a really big wake up call. But you know what? The craft growers that are growing in their local community are still going to have their support, and they're not really going to be affected when you have some of these larger international stuff. There's still always going to be a place for that local grower to have that high end product, it's really cool to see all the different aspects on the show and all the different ways that you see, people doing sustainability on all different scales from, 6 plants all the way up to, how many are you doing over there, Steve? I think you have the biggest grow of everyone here.
Well, we do 8,000 plants a hectare on average. Some plants closer, some further, but on average, probably 8,000 plants a hectare.
Yeah, so.
And we turn those over basically every 2 months, even 6 weeks. At 6 weeks, that's 8 crops a year. But we do rotate crops and put in, just leave fallow time. We plant crotalaria in between crops at peanuts.
Party at Steve's.
A little rotation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. So, and then Roger, you've been with the show for 3 years. I think after Marty, you're the longest co-host. Thanks for all the stuff that you've done, Roger.
I tell you what, I'll tell the story real quickly. I running ilovegrowingmarijuana.com. I had a great moderator that I met that I was watching him, and he was such a great help and inspiration to everybody on the forum. And he was doing dual root zone aquaponics, and it got me real interested. And he also used to come on the show and give away stuff from his store for free. You know, his name is well, we call him Dummy, or Aquaponic Dummy, and he's up in Maine. And we haven't seen him much in a while. He's had some issues, but we were sitting there talking, him and I, because all my staff and I talk on the phone, and we do video chats and all that. So we keep up and like we're friends instead of just an administrator and a bunch of moderators and stuff. And we were talking on the phone, having this great conversation one night because we got to be great friends. And he goes, "Oh, the invite, I just got the email from Steve to do the podcast." I said, "Oh, well, damn. Okay. Well, yeah, I know you love doing that." I said, "Well, okay." He goes, "Well, wait a minute." And he shot Steve an email and Steve immediately emailed me back and invited me to be a guest on the show that night. And I liked it so much. And Steve sends everybody an invite every week. Anybody that wants to come and contribute, you know, you pretty much can. You can, you got something to share. Don't be shy. I think Steve would agree. You know, always love to see somebody that's been around before and hadn't been a while. But thank you so much. And Marty, you're a great guy. You know, all the stuff you've gone through the last couple of years. I'm glad you're finally set up with a beautiful system and a beautiful home. And I'm telling you, I'm going to camp out there one day.
I got a spot set up for you, man. Just come on over.
And all the rest of you, I can't wait to get out. You know, I'm legally blind, so I can't drive anymore. And I let my license expire, so I can't even get on a damn plane. So like I keep missing the Humboldt conference because I just can't drive that far, you know. So we try to go to Michigan. Can I ask Josh a question? Are you rescheduling anything, or are we still too indefinite on this virus?
No, they are. I didn't cancel. I postponed for a year.
That's what I thought. A year. So it's just
so that unless we have a civil war, which I 100% support at this point. I know we're not going there, but I'm down to feed the fucking
We've been at this long without getting the
this isn't the show for rants. Maybe next week.
Shout out to Embracing Organics. They've had stream problems all night with YouTube harassing them. So
yeah, I saw their message. Yeah, that's a shame when they start messing with people's information.
We've taken a lot of time from these wonderful people's evening. Thanks again, everybody, for watching. This has been episode 200. We'll be back again next week with some more awesome content. I can't say thank you enough to all the awesome guests, Frenchie, Wade, Steve, Chris, Roger, Josh, everybody. Thanks again so much. If you want to find out more about our content, check us out on YouTube at Ponics or on SoundCloud, iTunes, iHeartRadio, over 150 other places where you can find podcasts. And we will see you guys again soon. Appreciate it, and take care.
You guys.